Hello, welcome to our webinar, Laser Product Safety Compliance. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar is being jointly given by MET Laboratories and the Photonics Group. MET is a leader in the testing of electrical and electronic equipment for environmental hardiness, product safety, and electromagnetic compatibility. MET operates world-class labs in Baltimore, Maryland, Santa Clara and Union City, California, Austin, Texas, and also runs operations in China, Taiwan, and Korea. The Photonics Group has been providing consulting and contract engineering services worldwide since 1979. The Photonics Group offers complete services including testing, compliance, training, and auditing. This webinar will run about 30 minutes with an additional 15 minutes for questions and answers. Due to the number of registrants, all attendees will have their phones muted. If you have a question, please type it in the questions area of your control panel. We will attempt to answer all questions at the end. If you are having technical difficulties, you can contact us the same way, or if not possible, call us at 410-935-6053. That's 410-935-6053. And we will try to resolve your problem quickly. Just a quick note on another upcoming event. In April, MET Labs is hosting a free overview webinar on medical product certification to 60601-1 3rd edition. You can register for this event at metlabs.com. Today's webinar is being presented by Scott Wolstein and Rick Cooper. Scott is President and Photonics Specialist at the Photonics Group. Rick is Director of MET's Product Safety Lab. At this point, I will hand over the presentation to Scott.
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending. We're going to go through the basics of laser product safety compliance from the conceptual through a roadmap through compliance kind of approach. So you are made aware of at least the process through the quagmire, if you will. So let's start off with the first slide. Okay, so we want to focus in on, like I mentioned, the early stages, incorporating design concepts into your products so you don't get down the road and realize, oh, you got a laser and now you're faced with a bunch of regulations that you should have addressed early on. So the focus of this would be how to assist in the early stages, incorporating photonics devices. And photonics in our discussion today includes lasers, includes fiber optics, includes light sources. Anything to do with the generation and management of light. And we'll also provide the roadmap of the process from your concepts all the way through to getting an accession number and the annual reporting process. Next. So lasers and other photonics technologies are unique in the world of radiation hazards because they provide highly concentrated light. We're talking coherent light, which could be focused and bundled in a very compact way, which creates hazards, both ocularly and skin or other damaging mechanisms. Next. So some might ask, what are the applicable regulations? What's forcing me to do this? Because, hey, you know, I could just stick a class 1 laser in a product and be done with it. Well, as we march through the applicable regulations, we'll get to the CDRH, which stipulates that every laser device has to go through compliance. They don't specify as to class. If you have a laser device, you must file for compliance. But specifically with regards to applicable regulations from local, i.e. County, believe it or not, city ordinances, all the way through to international, the chart on this slide gives you a concept of the relevant approaches. For instance, local regulations are rare. The one that comes to mind was the one in Washington State. They had a local municipality that thought that there needed to be more stringent requirements or regulations applied. Then you get to state, and the state agencies are pretty much sucking wind by way of financing now. So they typically cave to the federal code or OSHA, which is described through ANSI Z136, and OSHA has its own set of standards or what they call guidelines to help guide you through that. Nationally, we all follow the 21 CFR 1040, which stipulates performance requirements for lasers, not design requirements, but performance. And the reason for that is they don't want to mandate engineering controls specific to technologies. They want to just make sure that as long as you're within the performance requirements that you are meeting federal code. And then finally, internationally, the IEC EN 6825 and other standards, for instance, the RED standard series from Canada, which stands for the Radiation Emitting Devices Act, that also incorporates both the federal code and international. So those are the main regulations that apply. Next, please. So if you're developing compliant design culture, and I suggest that you do, you have to have these 4 aspects incorporated in whatever culture you build. And you really want to build a culture. You don't want to continue to push specifics. If your engineers don't get it at a cultural level, it's going to be kind of hard to go back and keep reminding them. So if you can build a design culture, that'd be great. And each design culture should have something like some proper risk engineering practices to make sure that you're not cavalier. I mean, you can build a device that is safe but not compliant. You can also build a device that's compliant but not safe. So in the matter of design, meeting federal and international regulations, and also product liability and risk mitigation on a corporate side. If you're an engineer, if you say, yeah, well, I put a wire in there, that's what the standard says, that's just meeting the code. For you to be a good risk mitigator and make sure your designs are compliant and safe, you need to take the extra step and go the extra mile. So building this into your corporate compliant design culture is a big deal. So proper risk engineering practices dovetails into ergonomics, right? So you want to have a place where you want to make sure the design works with the operation. You want to make sure that the controls that make the product safe are not something that puts you in ergonomic risk. So you're not going to reach over the beam to adjust a knob. You're not going to reach, you're not going to look through the beam to see a label or a control feature. That all goes to ergonomics. So that should be part of your design culture as well. And also appropriate usability of product. The federal code refers to this as replacement or substitution. And so what they're saying is if for some reason you're now making laser products that have a laser diode and you've been pumping out 100 of these things a week or a month or whatever, and all of a sudden the manufacturer goes away or something happens to that, you're not going to say, well, you know what, let's get a bigger or a device that puts out more power because we degrade it anyway and that just makes better sense kind of thing. Well, that's not good, because then you also open up the risk model where now you have a larger risk than you had previously intended. So the appropriate usability of the product is important. You don't want to put a larger thing or larger risk in a place where one doesn't necessarily need to be. And then finally, an operation of product does not violate safety performance standards. So you don't want to bury a risk within a risk. You want to make sure that your product doesn't violate, just by its incorporation in a product, other safety performance standards of the other aspects of the laser, of the final product itself. So it's a nesting issue, making sure that each risk incorporated in your product is properly verified, tested, and filed for. Next, please. So the importance of operator operations feedback and design, those of us in this webinar that are engineers, we all have the same kind of issue, and that is we want to fix a problem. So we'll end up designing things thinking that it's got features that we believe, drinking our own Kool-Aid, as it were, is one way of going. It's an extremely risky way of going. Even if you've been in the market for your entire life and you think you have all the answers, it's risky because the market can change. So the best way to do this is to get a focus group of actual users, and I'm talking in the beta phase, when you first come up with a conceptual product, get it into the hands of your customers as quickly as you can, and listen to their feedback. Prototypical hardware in the hands of operators is one of the most powerful ways of developing products that a lot of companies don't do. It's unfortunate, but if you do that in the beginning phases and you find out that you need a larger power laser or you need multiple sources or you need something else, it's now the time that you do that where it doesn't cost you so much as getting things through the compliance process and then realizing you have to make major changes because your end customer doesn't like those features or they don't work. So the more hands get on your prototypical hardware, and I know you're rolling your eyes thinking, well, we have secrecy or privacy issues with that. You can set up non-disclosure agreements. You can get this in representative hands, if you will, and just listen to the feedback. It's going to be tough to take, but it's meaningful data. So getting the hardware in the hands of operators is the most effective way to drive your design. Next, please. Okay, so now that you've gotten through the design concepts, you now are building a culture. Now let's talk about the actual compliance process itself, and specifically the checklist. So what we do is when we get engaged with a client, any compliance company for that matter, has to start off with a baseline. What is it that we need from the client to prepare the application, prepare for compliance filing? So we submit a checklist, and that is a step-by-step kind of process that allows our clients to go, okay, we've got that information, let's check that off, let's send it to them. It's an inventory, if you will. Next, please. So the information supply is checklist driven. It ensures the data supplied to us is as delivered. But that's important because this will create a draft application, which is the document that we submit to the federal government. You need to submit something that has the latest, most updated, that's a word, current information before you actually file. You need to have all that stuff ready to go. If you submit a partial application, there's a probability that it will be kicked back. And considering the workload that the compliance officers have, that's not a good thing to have. Time will not be on your side in that case. So you want to provide all the information as is integrated into the product. And we can take it on an as collected or wait until we get the entire checklist done. In some cases, if you're in R&D, you can't wait. You're developing things on the fly, and so we can work with that. That's a good position to be in R&D, so we can help guide you. In other words, if there's something that you're developing and you have limited specs, send it to us so we can help guide the rest of the design process. Next, please. All right, so once we get all the information from the checklist and it's as delivered, all the R&D is hardened as much as you can predict at that point. And that means that it's at a productized kind of level. It's not a one-off. This is a product that you're going marching forward. Then we prepare a draft package, which includes the application, the supplemental information, and this would be the performance document that we submit. It includes a support skeleton of all the information that we require in the checklist to support your application substantive answers, if you will. You're going to say yes on something, you need to provide the backup information. Next, please. So the client gets it and they review it. And this is the first time that you have a chance to really say, okay, this is what we're going to submit to the government. We want to make sure that this has everything we want in it. There's no going back past this stage. Past this would have to file supplements or addendums to the package, which then draws more scrutiny to what you're doing. And that may or may not be a good thing, especially if you've got product that has been sold and it's waiting for this process. So this is a critical step, and it's a chance to fix the major elements in the package. Next, please. Okay, so once we finish all the notes, make sure everything's ready to go, we debug and create a final package. And that is the document that gets submitted. That also gets put in your program management in your project file as something that you submit to other LSOs or PSOs when you transfer the product to and from the marketplace. So you want to make sure it's accurate and it reflects your product. Next, please. Okay, so after the final package is reviewed, any small changes are performed, you have the signatory document the executive sign off on that. It's typically an officer or someone from a director level on up that could sign for the company. This is your company representing to the federal government. So it's got to be the point of contact in which if they ever have any problems with the product, they would contact that person. And so the package is done. Next, please. And then we submit the package next day. So we know when they get it, they sign for it, and that's when we know, and they know that we know that the project clock starts. So they have typically 30 days to turn around a response. Next, please. All right, so they will send an acknowledgement letter. It could be just simply, thank you for following the federal code. We have received your document. We have no more questions. Or if you're a manufacturer that has never done this before or have had problems with the CDRH or filing, they'll send you an initial letter which says, thank you for your application. We're currently reviewing this. If we have any questions, we'll let you know. If you get an initial letter, you make sure that you push the federal government to give you a final letter. Okay, having just an initial letter is not good enough for insurance and legal reasons. You need to have the government saying they're starting something, and you need to have the government saying they're finished with something. The acknowledgement letter just says you followed federal code, good luck to you. But in any case, either the initial letter or an acknowledgement letter will have what they call an accession number. It's critical that you get that. That will be that's a sign that you've done the right thing. That accession number is sort of like a commodity. It gets traded between your company and the LSO or PSO of the company that buys it, that integrates the product or sells it. They need to have that accession number. So that's a very important thing that you have in your document. It's mandated to occur within 30 days of submission. We've seen it as short as a week. We've seen it as long as 60 days. But the most important thing that's on that slide is that the product cannot be sold until accession number is received. You cannot introduce a laser product in the United States into United States commerce without an accession number. If you're caught in violation of that, there could be some serious problems. Next, please. Once you've gone through the application process, you have to understand that you now are a file has been opened for you at the CDRH. You are now required to submit annual reports before the September 1st of each manufacturing year. This is nothing more than how many units have you sold. They're not requiring you to give up your customer list. This is basically saying, okay, you've introduced a controlled product into the market space. Have you had any problems with safety issues? So it's good in the sense that it keeps you honest in terms of how is your product performing in a safety-related aspect. If you have any problems with guards, the limit switch is failing, that kind of thing, you will know it, the government will know it, and they'll help you with recall issues. They will help notify your customers. It's a good thing. I find it a very valuable thing. They've been able to overturn some pretty bad engineering practices early on by the annual reporting process. So it's a necessary evil. It's a pain in the butt. It's like taxes, but if you don't do it, there's some severe repercussions. We've had a client actually been shut down because they didn't file for annual reports, and they hired us to get us out of the junk, and it was serious. So that's an important part of the whole compliance process. Next, please. All right, so I keep on saying what would happen. Here are two slides that describe things that could happen if you don't file for compliance or you don't follow up with your annual reporting requirements. You can violate federal laws, which require the repair, fix and replace, recall, retrofit, or destroy product, and that includes fees and penalties. You could be in violation of local and state regulations. Next slide, please. You could violate local and state workplace and registration regulations. Okay, that's where OSHA gets involved. And with respect to importation and exportation, you have drayage fees and FDA cognizance fees and costs. And FDA cognizance fees are 24 hours on the clock. So if you think that you can, well, tomorrow's quick enough, well, you're 24 hours into the clock already. And also be very aware, especially in the photonics field, photonics is listed as a critical U.S. technology. It has been for a while. So be careful about what you're sending in and out of the country. You could be in violation of Department of Commerce and or Department of State, which is ITAR regulations as well. So there's a lot to this. Next, please. All right, so if you know that there are regulations and you do not, you make the decision as a company to not follow them, then there could be civil and criminal prosecution. There's been one case where a medical laser manufacturer knew about the 21 CFR 1040, decided, what the heck, we're going to just do it anyway. And that CEO is still in jail. So you got to be careful about knowing the regulations and not doing anything about them. You don't want to be in that position. Next, please. And I think it's over to Rick.
Okay, well, my name is Rick Cooper. I'm the Director of Product Safety Laboratory at Met Labs. Thank you also for attending our webinar today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Met Laboratories and regulatory requirements in North America for basic product safety. And I'll just be a few more minutes here, taking your time. So about Met, we were founded in 1959 by Leonard Pryor. We're still a privately owned company, and Mr. Pryor actually is still involved in our operations from time to time. We are the first NRTL, having attained that status in 1989, shortly followed by accreditation by the Standards Council of Canada to allow our certification mark to be accepted in Canada. We're also accredited by the IECE for the CV scheme, allowing us to exchange reports and certificates with dozens of other laboratories and organizations around the world. We're also accredited by A2LA for product safety testing specifically. Among these various accreditors, we've got a scope of more than 200 product categories or standards. We are recognized by all the major retailers across North America. We are a single source laboratory offering product safety, EMC, environmental simulation, laser safety through the Photonics group, and so on. And we have locations around the world, as Barnaby stated earlier in the webinar. We consider ourselves to be a very responsive lab, and we are also offering our clients real-time project tracking. In the United States, electrical product regulatory requirements are addressed in one of several different ways. And in one of these ways, most product manufacturers are impacted. The National Electrical Code, the NFPA 70, the code that addresses building wiring, does have a statement within it, Article 110.3, that requires that equipment be suitable and that this may be evidenced by listing or labeling. Leaves it up to one of the many thousands of authorities having jurisdiction around the country to decide whether an electrical product being installed in their county, their state, their village can be installed and be compliant. And so they may require third-party certification, such as by an NRTL, nationally recognized testing laboratory. If your product's going into the workplace, then you have OSHA to contend with. And in 29 CFR 1910.303A, there is a requirement that that's imposed on the user of electrical products in the workplace, that is the employer, to deploy equipment that has been approved by a nationally recognized testing laboratory. Retailers and buyers also have their own requirements. Retailers, most major retailers, perhaps all major retailers, are requiring that electrical products be listed or certified by an accredited testing and certification organization before they'll put it on their shelves or sell it through online means. Many buyers, savvy buyers in particular, are mandating it. Insurance companies of users of the equipment may mandate that equipment be certified before they can use that equipment. And of course, if your competition is doing it, there may be a need for you to obtain certification for your competitive product in order to remain competitive. In Canada, it's not terribly different. There's the Canadian Electrical Code with a similar requirement as in the U.S. In Ontario, specifically, there is the Electrical Safety Authority. That organization regulates electrical safety throughout the province, and many other provinces and regulators often look to the ESA for guidance for their particular regions. And again, you've got the retailers and buyers requiring it. You may have insurance companies requiring it. And again, if your competition is doing it, it may be necessary for you to do it as well. So ordinary product safety involves a number of different risks that must be assessed. There is electric shock, there's electrical energy hazards, there are fire hazards to address, mechanical hazards, heat hazards, radiation hazards, one of which Scott elaborated on at the beginning of this webinar, and then chemical hazards. Speaking specifically about laser safety and what it has to do with basic electrical product safety, electrical products that have laser features cannot be certified as compliant with electrical safety standards if the laser features are not properly addressed. Many product safety standards require this compliance with national laser safety standards. In the U.S., and Scott's also mentioned this, in the U.S. it's mandated by the FDA, and compliance shall be in accordance with CFR Part 1040. In Canada, there's Health Canada, and specifically the Radiation Protection Bureau that must be dealt with. So Met Laboratories and the Photonics group have joined forces to offer the appropriate complementary services. The Photonics group can test laser devices, issue reports. Met Laboratories can accept this data in conjunction with our own testing and certification efforts for ordinary product safety to allow your product to be declared compliant with U.S. or Canadian or even international standards. And together, we feel this will allow you to get your product to market faster. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Rick. That concludes the presentation portion of this webinar. The recording of this webinar will be available on metlabs.com. We will send a follow-up email with a link to this recording. Now we will answer questions. If you have a question, please type it in the questions area of your control panel. For questions we can easily address now, we will read the question aloud, then give a verbal answer. Scott, I think you have a couple questions, or do you see them there?
Okay. I got the two questions I have. One is it's partially cut off. Unfortunately, I can't read it all. Let's see if
I can read it if you tell me which question it is.
About the acknowledgement letter. If you have mentioned that after the acknowledgement letter.
Yeah. You have mentioned that after the acknowledgement letter, another letter should be expected from FDA. Can you confirm how much time does it take before we receive that letter?
That's a good question. They're open-ended on that. The best course when you receive an acknowledgement letter, that's an initial letter saying that we're reviewing it, that if we have any questions during the review, that we'll get back to you. I would push for them. You now have an accession number. I would call them and say, okay, what is it that you have questions about, or are there any issues in the application that you need us helping with? And you'll get the direct answer. Once you're in their system, it's okay to talk to them. So I would urge you to contact the CDRH and ask them specifically what questions they have, or if you can supply information proactively. But you need to get that final letter from them. And if they come back and say, well, that's all we're going to give you, then say, I need a letter for that. Okay, the second one. Yeah, Okay. Got it. Okay. Does laser transceiver module like SFP module is needed to comply with the FCC Part 15? We don't do FCC stuff. That'd probably be a question we could pitch over to Met. If it has to do with RF, that's their game. The FCC doesn't regulate laser compliance. Okay. If we only use very low power performance laser as a pointer, do we still need to do verification? Absolutely. The federal code does not stipulate specific powers. They just say that if you have a laser device that emits between, I think it's 100 nanometers and 12 microns, that it is a laser device. They don't stipulate power. They just say, does it emit laser radiation? If the answer is yes, then you need to file for compliance. What level of testing is appropriate for an OEM producing laser products made from uncertified laser modules? Since the module suppliers tend to avoid voluntary FDA submissions as an OEM, supplier agreement to submit 100% of module production to quantitative optical power measurement using calibrated meters sufficient, robust, or weak? That's a fairly nested question. The federal code stipulates that you test when you reach the limits of a class. So if you're getting from class 2 to from class 2A or so, or class 3, 3B kind of thing, if you're on the limits, then you need to go through testing. If you are not, if you're clearly within one class or the other, they don't require testing. Data sheet stipulation is fine enough. Hopefully your incoming quality control is good enough to catch those things. In other words, you're buying a half a milliwatt laser diode from somebody and you're putting it into an OEM product. Your incoming inspection should test to make sure that it's half a milliwatt plus or minus, and then you submit that through your OEM. And as long as it's within the class, you're fine. I don't know if that answers that question. If it does, super. If not, we should take that one offline because it's fairly nested. Let's see. What if your product uses Class 1 approved SFPs? Do you need to register this product with the FDA? When you say approved, I need to know what that means. Does that mean it's approved through some sort of telecom cert, or is that approved meaning that it's been filed for and you have an accession number? If it's a separate product and it's compliant, you don't have to worry about it. If it's built as a replacement module for a system that's not, and you're now embedding it into an overall rack system. For instance, you have multiple SFPs in a chassis, and none of that's gone through compliance. Then the answer to that question is it's part of the larger product effort. We manufacture platforms and employ third-party approved Class 1 pluggable SFP transceivers into our platforms. I'm not sure the question there, but I guess the question is, do we need to go through compliance? Again, if it's approved, then an approval means that it's through, you have an accession number. Remember, you're driving accession numbers. You're driving accession numbers. You're making sure that whoever's supplying you with a laser device supplies you with an accession number. You never want to take a laser product and bury it into your product without making sure that that's filed for, because then you're taking on the whole entire risk. If they haven't gone through the compliance process, you're now liable for doing that. So if I'm buying a laser product from somebody, and my first question is, have you gone through compliance? And they're like, yeah, well, it better be. And the way that you prove that is they provide you an accession number. If they haven't, then they haven't gone through the compliance process. It's that simple. So if you have an accession number, then they've gone through it. Can we apply Laser Notice 54? Laser Notice 54, I'm trying to remember because there's so many laser notices right now. Laser Notice 54, if you could remind me what that is, I could let you know. Note that our platforms do not themselves otherwise incorporate lasers, simply accept pluggable SFPs. Okay. Yes. Well, okay. So then your platform, if your platform takes the laser light and transports it and changes it from one thing to another, you might have an issue there. If these pluggable SFPs are just transporting, you're not changing the power, then your whole entire product may not necessarily go through compliance. I'd have to look at the schematics and see how you're managing the laser light. Could you repeat why it's so important to receive a final letter from CDRH and not just an initial letter, which already has an accession number? Okay, so you have every company in this country, and probably overseas as well, has completed operations insurance. It's part of your operating stuff. And so to prevent risk, and prevent you as a manufacturer from selling just a whole bunch of prototypes that are in various stages of development, insurers need to know that what you're selling is completed. It's a completed product. It's gone through all the certifications. It's met through all the tests. It's a ready-to-go consumable product. So if the government, if the initial letter comes in and says, "Hi, thank you for submitting this to the federal government. We're reviewing your application. If we have any questions during our review, we'll let you know." The insurance carrier looks at that and says, "Okay, well, it's a regulated product, and the government agency of cognizance just said they got your application and they're currently reviewing it. You haven't met the acid test for completed operations." So until they come back and say, "Yeah, it started the review, we've gone through the review, we've ended the review," 5 years down the line, if you let this thing go on, they could say, "Oh, yeah, you know what? The interlock scheme that you've used is not compliant. So therefore, you now have to go out and retrofit in field, return to fix, or destroy in place." That creates a huge liability, both in terms of cost, and if it's in a critical application like military or law enforcement or first responder, that could set up a huge bunch of problems. So what we told the CDRH, because they were under confusion with respect to this, we said, listen, for companies that have done this before, just an acknowledgement letter makes sense, and so that's why they did it. I mean, our insistence changed that portion of the code and how they respond. We have clients out there that actually make lasers. They are laser manufacturers, and all they have is a bunch of initial letters. And we gave them a corporate training on this, and they freaked out. They went to the government. The government said, "Yeah, you know what? We should just send acknowledgement letters to these guys," because they don't have the staff to do each project, to review each project. So they look for critical things. If it passes all the things, they just say, "Fine, here's your letter." So in a long-winded answer, the importance to receive a final letter from CDRH is to close out the loop that they infer that they're doing. They're not doing it, but they're saying in writing that they're doing it. Does that make any sense? I hope it does, but that's what we've been able to do. So if you have an initial letter, you contact the CDRH and you get a final letter, or you get an acknowledgement letter to close out that inferred review process. Okay, next one. We use XFP and SFP plug modules in our products. They are Class 1, unmodified, and already certified. The CDRH has said that in this case we do not need to register as we are seen as distributors. We have asked whether the same can apply to the use of Class 1M plug-in modules, but have not yet had a response. Does MetLab have a view on this? Rick, are you still there? Or did he leave?
Yes, Scott. Yes.
Okay. Do you have a view on that?
Sorry. I don't actually have a view of the question. If you just wait one moment, I will see the question. Okay. As far as Class 1M versus Class 1, don't know off the top of my head. Generally, though, if the module, usually it's up to the end product manufacturer to have the end product compliant with the requirements, and in many cases they will rely on data and evidence of CDRH filing from the component manufacturer. I'm not familiar with what's happening with Class 1M modules at this time.
Yeah, and if they're taking this long to respond to that, then yeah, that's a problem. Maybe they're in a little bit of a loop themselves. I would push for a final ruling. That's what I would do. Okay, let's see, a couple more. Yeah, wait one. Okay. So to respond, what if your product uses Class 1 approved SFPs? Do you need to register this product with the FDA? And the response back from the same attendee came back saying they have 21 CFR 1040. approval. So you need to register. So if they have approval, if they have an accession number, then you're done. Yeah, if your product uses Class 1 approved SFPs, do you need to register this product with the FDA? I'm assuming that that's the rack that they're questioning. But if not, if the SFPs have come in and they're approved through the CDRH through 21 CFR 1040, then they're done. Depending upon what the rack is using them for, and typically it's just rerouting, it's a traffic manager kind of thing, then you're pretty much done. Yes, the rack, got it. Okay, good. Let's see. All right, when dealing with uncertified laser modules as an OEM building a laser product, is routine testing required for the module plus original type certification for the laser module acceptable, or does the module need to undergo routine third-party evaluation, quarterly audits? No. When you submit for the application, you stipulate your quality control plan. If your quality control plan has identified critical safety materials that need to go through a quarterly or a periodic review, that's where that goes in. But typically, your testing should not. If your duration changes your class, then your design is wrong. Okay, that's really what they're looking for there. So routine testing, if it's part of your quality control, good for you. But if you identify that as risky and that it could change classification, because if you don't test periodically, these laser diodes or whatever you have in there derate to such a point where it changes the classification, then I look at the design. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Yep.
If you have additional unanswered questions, please contact us via phone or email. Tomorrow, we will send a follow-up email that will include a link to the presentation. That concludes our webinar. Thank you for joining us today.